Hi, it's Katrina! Militaries, designers, and outdoor enthusiasts have come up with some shocking concepts for concealing humans, ships, and military vehicles. From the creative to the somewhat strange, here are 8 of the most insane camouflages in the world. Number 8. World War I Camouflage Trees. During World War I, the French, British, and Germans placed fake trees in the forest along the front lines. They were first used in 1915 by the French, who passed the idea along to the British. Shortly thereafter, the Germans adopted the idea. The camouflage trees were often replicas of real trees near the front line that had been damaged by a bomb. Engineers photographed and measured the destroyed tree, which was then recreated by artists using wrinkled and painted iron as bark, along with textured materials such as pulverized shells. The replicas were extremely detailed and looked exactly like the real trees, right down to the broken and intact branches. This lengthy and complicated process was carried out secretly to prevent enemies from learning about the fake trees. To avoid being spotted, the camouflage trees were installed at night, after first removing the real tree it was modeled after. Each tree was hollow and contained an inner armor tube to protect the soldier inside. There was a seat for the occupant inside the trunk near the top, as well as a cleverly disguised mesh viewing hole. The soldier would observe his surroundings through a periscope or telescope and report the details to troops on the ground. Camouflage trees gave soldiers the advantage of being able to catch a first-hand glimpse of the front lines without being seen by the enemy. Number 7. Psychedelic Camouflage. Starting in the early 20th century, British warships were occasionally painted in razzle-dazzle, a type of psychedelic, brightly colored pattern that was meant to make targets visually confusing rather than hide them, as concealment technology for warships did not yet exist. Besides featuring wild colors, razzle-dazzle consisted of contrasting lines and shapes going in various directions. This made it difficult for an enemy to figure out important details such as the type of vessel, its size, how fast it was going, and in what direction. Each razzle-dazzle ship had a unique pattern and color scheme. One featured red, gray, black, and white angular shapes. Another had more curved shapes in blue, black, and white. There was also a zebra print ship and one that was painted like a brick wall. Although the Brits can be credited with starting the razzle-dazzle trend, the Americans also used it. In 1904, the U.S. Navy launched the USS Nebraska, which had a contrasting chevron pattern on its hull and smokestacks. A dozen Navy warships were eventually covered in crazy patterns and colors. Razzle-dazzle reached its peak popularity during World War I, especially among the British Royal Navy. One newspaper reporter described the radically patterned warships as a flock of sea-going Easter eggs, while another referred to them as floating cubist paintings. Today, only a few of these catchy, flashy ships survive. And now for number 6, but first wanted to give a quick shout out to Jay Singh, the Duke of the Skull, Trafalgar Law, and Jared Quinney for being so amazing. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell for more videos like these, and let me know what topics you'd like to see in the comments below. Number 6. Shadow Shield. Shadow Shield is a lightweight, portable concealment shield developed by Pine Harbor Holding Company. It's a mirror that is angled slightly forward and reflects the ground in front of it. Because of the angle, it is good for hunting since animals, and maybe people, won't be able to see themselves reflected in it. It is ideal for when use of traditional camouflage, such as patterned clothing, is impractical or unavailable, or when someone just wants to hide themselves extremely well. The 5-pound aluminum and polycarbonate shield can be used in any terrain or environment and works by using blending and disguising abilities. It's 24 inches high and 32 inches wide and contains an observation port. While the Shadow Shield is an extremely simple yet effective product, not everyone sees it as practical. Wild West Canada referred to it as an overpowered hunting device, and a reminder that sometimes the technological advancements of hunting equipment gets a little carried away, inventing things so overpowered you would swear they are preparing for a battle with their alien overlords. Their words, not mine. What do you think about the Shadow Shield? Let me know in the comments. Number 5. Pink Desert Camouflage. During the late 1960s, the UK's Ministry of Defence contracted with the Marshals of Cambridge to outfit a fleet of 72 Land Rover Series 2A models for desert use. The vehicles were equipped with additional fuel tanks, upgraded navigation equipment, blackout lamps, search lamps, smoke grenade launchers, a general-purpose machine gun, an anti-tank weapon, flare guns, and more. Altogether, just one of the modified Land Rovers weighed over 6,600 pounds, even without doors, a windshield, and a roof. The new gadgets and gizmos were pretty impressive, but perhaps the strangest feature of the upgraded Land Rovers was their pink paint job. The British Army's Special Air Service, SAS, had determined that pink was the most effective camouflage color for use in the desert, so the bronze-green color scheme of the Series 2A models was replaced by a pacifying, almost pastel pink shade, earning the fleet the nickname of the Pink Panthers. They were used from 1968 until 1984. Today, 20 of the Pink Panthers are thought to still exist. You can get your own for about $86,000. Number 4. Tanks designed as tigers. The M46 Patton was a formidable tank armed with a 90mm main gun, a 50 caliber machine gun, and two 30 caliber machine guns. It began service during the Korean War at the Battle of the Pusan Perimeter in August 1950 as part of the 6th Tank Battalion. The M46 Patton proved critical to defense, and more were subsequently put into service at Incheon with the 1st Marine Division's 1st Tank Battalion. The 24th Infantry Division's 6th Tank Battalion painted tiger faces on their M46s in an attempt to wage psychological warfare against the Chinese. The tiger is revered as a symbol of power in Chinese and Korean cultures, and the theory behind putting one on the front of the tank was that the image of a tiger would demoralize and therefore weaken the adversary. The effectiveness of this short-lived strategy is highly questionable. After the Korean War, the M46 was replaced by the improved M47 tank. Number 3. A ship disguised as an island. On February 27, 1942, the Allied naval fleet was defeated by the Japanese Imperial Navy in the Battle of the Java Sea. In the days following the crushing battle, the Japanese sunk 3 of the 4 remaining Dutch ships. The slow-moving 184-foot-long minesweeper Chrysler was the last remaining ship. It was lightly armed and therefore ill-equipped for battle, and floating in plain view of any Japanese aircraft or naval vessels that might pass by. The Chrysler's best chance of survival was to flee from Japanese-occupied waters towards Australia, except there was no way it could outrun a Japanese vessel. To sneak past the Japanese undetected, the crew of the Chrysler came up with the unconventional idea of disguising the vessel as an island. The area contained over 18,000 small islands, and the ship was big enough to pass off as a small one, so the idea wasn't as far-fetched as it seemed. The 45-man crew stopped the ship at a nearby island, cut down as much vegetation as possible, and covered the vessel's entire surface area with foliage. They arranged the plants in a way that mimicked jungle vegetation and painted any exposed metal in shades of gray to resemble rock formations. The ruse was surprisingly convincing, especially from a distance. Since islands don't move, however, the ship had to be careful. During the day, it anchored close to actual islands and remained stationary. At nighttime, Chrysler painstakingly crept toward Australian waters, finally reaching safety after 8 days as the only Dutch vessel of its class to escape the hostile zone of the Java Sea. Number 2. Afghan Army Camo. In April of this year, the Pentagon and the U.S. military fell under scrutiny for spending $28 million on one of the most expensive and least effective camouflage designs for the new Afghan Army uniform. The wasteful expenditure, which the military sought to keep quiet, covered 430,000 uniforms with a woodland camouflage pattern, which were only useful in about 2% of Afghanistan's mostly desert territory. The uniforms even earned a seal of disapproval from the U.S. Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, John Sopko. "I'd hate to be an Afghan soldier wearing that uniform," he said. "It's like having 'shoot me' written on the back." The pattern, called Spec Force Forest, was chosen by the Afghan defense minister with the consent of the U.S. military, despite the Pentagon's ownership of more effective designs and the patterns being tested for suitability in Afghanistan. It was the only one of 7 patterns that required the Pentagon to pay licensing fees, and was both the most expensive and the most detectable. This wasn't the only poor spending decision made in regard to Afghan Army uniforms. By 2017, 1.3 million uniforms in woodland print were purchased for the Afghan military, costing $93 million total. The frivolous spending outraged many, including then Defense Secretary Jim Mattis and the Inspector General. Congress ordered the Pentagon to find out if there is a better, more effective pattern, which there obviously is. A West Point professor of cognitive science was commissioned by the Pentagon to determine the best uniform for the Army. As Afghanistan continues to struggle with poverty, insurgents, and other forms of instability, the last thing its army needed was a uniform that draws attention to soldiers rather than help conceal them. After millions of dollars were drained from the government coffers for the funding of the uniforms, I'm sure the taxpayer can agree. Hopefully, the new study finds a camouflage design that truly works. Number 1. Shark Repellent Wetsuit. Shark attacks account for a total of 4 to 5 deaths annually worldwide. Despite this small number, anyone who loves surfing, scuba diving, or participating in any other activities in shark-laden waters is of course at a higher risk for being attacked. It's understandable, therefore, that some marine enthusiasts are trying to figure out a way to mitigate this risk. The Australian company Shark Attack Mitigation Systems, or SAMS, was founded in 2011 by surfing entrepreneurs Hamish Jolly and Craig Anderson. Its goal was to design a safer wetsuit using science. The following year, they summoned the help of Professor Sean Collin and Dr. Nathan Hart of the University of Western Australia's Oceans Institute for designing the wetsuit, with financial support from the Western Australian government. The startup's first product was introduced in 2013. After determining that sharks are most likely colorblind, the researchers came up with 2 wetsuit designs. One is meant to camouflage the individual by making it hard for sharks to spot in the water. The other, less sophisticated wetsuit is meant to repel sharks by resembling a sea snake, which sharks don't like to eat, signaling to the predators that the human is not worth going after. SAMS admitted that the effectiveness of the wetsuits was unknown and needs to be determined given the lack of a scientific consensus regarding effective shark deterrence. The concept seems promising, however, and is under continuous development. Thanks for watching! Who's ready to try out the shark repellent wetsuit? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!